the United Nations, the U.S. has engineered rare agreement in the Security Council, getting China on board in a vote today against North Korea, imposing sanctions. All this as the U.S. and South Korea continued a joint military exercise today, despite threats of retaliation from the North. Joining me now from the UN, Ambassador Susan Rice. First of all, Ambassador, congratulations, because it was a lot of behind-the-scenes negotiations that got China on board, and I know you were leading the way.
Thank you, Andrea.
This is a major step for the U.S. It's the fourth sanctions resolution against North Korea. It doesn't seem to be having any impact on Pyongyang. What do we do next?
Well, Andrea, first of all, today's resolution was a very important step because it will not only raise the cost to North Korea's leaders of pursuing their illegal nuclear and missile programs, but it will also make it much harder for them to continue those programs effectively because it's going to constrain their finances, it's going to constrain their ability to procure the kinds of technical materials that they need and the technology that they need to advance those programs. So it's going to set those programs back. And the next steps include strong implementation in coordination with China and the other countries who joined in passing this resolution unanimously. And obviously, we're very much invested in our alliances and partnership, particularly with South Korea, Japan, and the other countries in the region. And we'll continue to do what's necessary to protect the United States of America and protect our allies while upping the pressure and the cost on North Korea.
They are threatening to retaliate. Is it possible for them to hit the continental U.S. with a missile?
Well, Andrea, we have the capability to defend the United States against a North Korean ballistic missile attack, if ever there were one. But these threats and provocations are really not productive. They're not achieving anything. They're not getting what is a very impoverished and very isolated state any further. One of the important provisions of this resolution today was to make clear that a wide range of luxury goods, and including some very specific luxury goods, aren't going to be able to be imported for the leadership of North Korea, which is living large while starving its people. And that sort of behavior also has to stop because North Korea deserves ultimately, if it were to give up its illicit nuclear program, to enable its people to join the community of nations and become a normal state.
There was criticism at the Senate Foreign Relations Committee today of China because Beijing, according to the senators, is still propping up North Korea with all sorts of economic aid. It is their chief trading partner and their chief resource. So while helping at the UN today, is China still not really being helpful in starving the regime of resources?
Well, there's certainly more that China could do on a national basis. China looks at North Korea and sees an unstable state on its border and worries about the spillover consequences of regime collapse. But here in New York, including today after a very difficult few weeks of negotiations, for the fifth time they've joined us in passing a strong resolution, not only condemning North Korea, but this is, as you mentioned, the fourth round of sanctions, and this is now one of the toughest sanctions regimes that the United Nations has enacted. So China is definitely increasingly frustrated with North Korea, angry at this latest nuclear test, but there still are very real limitations on how far it's prepared to go on a national and bilateral basis to squeeze the regime. We continue to talk to the Chinese and make the point, which I think they're increasingly understanding, that the erratic behavior of the leadership in North Korea is bad for China and is destabilizing a region in which we both have a very significant stake.
Now, I know that you were a basketball player in high school and have played some basketball on the administration team with the president, the cabinet team. What do you make of Dennis Rodman and of someone like Dennis Rodman going to North Korea and satisfying the leaders, Kim Jong-un's love of basketball? And does this help prop him up to have prominent Americans, and there have been others, go to North Korea and show friendship with the regime?
Well, first of all, Andrea, you've overstated my basketball skills, so I want to set the record straight on that.
But you're an athlete. We know that.
But clearly, I thought Secretary Kerry put it best when he said that Dennis Rodman's been a great basketball player, and as a diplomat, he's a great basketball player.
At the same time, would your warning be to other Americans not to show signs of friendship to this regime at a time when they are in fact, threatening to break the armistice, the 1953 armistice with the South, the truce that is obtained for all of these decades.
Well, the North has made a number of threats and taken a lot of provocative actions, which we think are condemnable and aren't getting it anywhere. And frankly, I think the North needs to understand that as long as it persists in this behavior, that the sort of friendship that it professes it wants with Dennis Rodman or with others is very hard to achieve on a broader basis because every step it takes, rather than bringing it closer to normalized relations, is making it more isolated. So, there's another path. We've tried to show North Korea that there's two ways it can go. It can go down a path of further provocation and enhanced isolation and economic pressure and privation, or it can turn on a different path, as the President and others have encouraged it to do, and choose the path of peace, accept the international obligations that it's under, and then there'll be much more than Dennis Rodman available to it.
There are reports that there have been secret envoys to North Korea. Is the President still open to engagement with North Korea, to diplomacy, to some kind of dialogue if they change their tune?
We have, of course, not ruled out dialogue, and indeed the resolution that we adopted today said that North Korea ought to return to the six-party talks, of which we are a participant. But for those talks to be meaningful and lead anywhere, North Korea has to show, for a change, that it's actually ready to uphold the agreements that it's already made and willing to implement its commitment. So the first step needs to be a renewed demonstration in practical terms and actionable terms of North Korea's seriousness. And then, yes, of course, our aim is to deal with this issue of denuclearization at the negotiating table.
UN Ambassador Susan Rice on a very busy day. Thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you. Good to be with you.